Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the story of Jenkins, the open source automation server that's been a pillar of software development for, well, almost 2 decades now. It's a fascinating tale of a digital butler that quietly ended up becoming a king. So let's start with a question every single developer knows and dreads. You know that feeling, right? That sinking pit in your stomach when you realize your code change just brought the entire project to a grinding halt. Well, it turns out that exact problem is why Jenkins was created in the first place. Okay, picture this. It's the early 2000s. The Agile Manifesto just dropped, and it's completely changing how we build software. Teams are trying to move faster, ship code more often. But the thing is, more changes meant more broken builds. It was a huge bottleneck. So, in 2004, a developer at Sun Microsystems named Kosuke Kawaguchi decided to fix it. He created a simple but brilliant servant, an automation project he called Hudson, which, yeah, you guessed it, would eventually become the Jenkins we all know today. So what was Hudson's mission? It was actually super simple but totally game-changing. Automatically test code before it gets integrated into the main repository. That one little step, verifying the code first, was everything. It protected the codebase and let teams build software way faster and more reliably. Honestly, it was the key that unlocked Agile for the masses. So how does this whole automation engine actually work? How does it manage to orchestrate the entire software development lifecycle? Well, it all kicks off with a core idea that Jenkins really helped bring to the mainstream: continuous integration. You see, the whole point of CI is all about one thing: creating a super fast feedback loop. Jenkins is constantly watching your code repository. The second it spots a change, it kicks off a whole workflow to build and test the application. That way, the team finds out almost immediately if something's wrong, right when it's easiest and cheapest to fix. And this workflow, right here, is the beating heart of Jenkins. What used to be a really risky manual process is now completely automated. A developer commits some code, and that one action starts a chain reaction. Jenkins sees it, hands off the work to an agent to do the build and the testing, and then pings the team with the result. It's a beautiful system built for consistency and reliability. Now, you might be wondering, how does it handle all this work, especially for big teams? Well, it's got this really smart setup, a distributed controller-agent architecture. Think of the central controller as the brain. It manages everything, schedules all the jobs, and shows you the results. But the actual heavy lifting, the building and testing, gets dispatched to a whole fleet of agent nodes. These are the workers, and they can run on pretty much any operating system, which means you can test your app across all sorts of different environments, all at the same time. All right, let's get into what I think is the most interesting part of the Jenkins story. See, the core of Jenkins is actually pretty lean on purpose. Its incredible, world-renowned power comes from its massive ecosystem of plugins. And this, right here, leads us to a really fascinating trade-off. Get this, there are over 1,800 community-contributed plugins available. That means Jenkins can integrate with pretty much any tool you can think of in the entire DevOps universe. Git, Docker, AWS, Kubernetes, Slack, you name it, there is a plugin for that. This is where Jenkins gets its legendary flexibility. But, and this is a huge but, here's the paradox. The very thing that makes Jenkins so unbelievably powerful is also its greatest weakness. Plugins are by far the most common source of instability, security holes, and frustrating update conflicts. Managing this huge, sprawling collection of plugins creates a massive amount of work. It's like a hidden tax you have to pay for all that flexibility. So, to deal with all this complexity, Jenkins had to get smarter. It evolved. And that evolution led to what we now call pipeline as code, which is this brilliant idea of treating your build and deployment process just like you treat your application code. So how do you do this? Well, it all lives in a single text file called a Jenkins file, and you've got 2 main flavors to choose from. First, there's declarative. It's the newer, more structured way that's way easier to read and write, and it's what you should probably use most of the time. But then there's the original scripted syntax. It's based on Groovy, and it is immensely powerful if you have really complex logic, but man, the learning curve is steep. Now, here's a really important point to get. The Jenkins file isn't there to replace your build tools like Maven or NPM. Not at all. Think of it more like a high-level glue layer or the conductor of an orchestra.
It defines the stages, like build, test, and deploy, and then it calls the right tools at exactly the right time. And because you store this file in Git, your entire pipeline becomes versioned, reviewable, and reproducible. It becomes the single source of truth for the whole team.
Okay, so let's fast forward to today. Jenkins has been around for a while. It's the old king on the throne. But as with any king, new challengers eventually arrive on the scene. And these modern rivals, they're built with a completely different philosophy, which forces teams to make a really interesting strategic choice.
And when you look at the competition, like GitLab CI or GitHub Actions, you see a totally different approach. Jenkins is this standalone tool that you host and manage yourself. These new platforms, on the other hand, offer CI/CD as a feature that's deeply baked into their ecosystem. They use simpler YAML files for configuration, and really, they trade some of Jenkins's infinite customizability for a much more streamlined, it-just-works, out-of-the-box experience. I love this quote because it just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly explains the difference in philosophy. Jenkins is the a la carte menu, right? You get to pick and choose from thousands of plugins to build your own perfect toolchain piece by piece. Its rivals are the all-inclusive resort. Everything is bundled together for you. So the question is, do you want to build it yourself, or do you prefer an integrated experience? Okay, so this brings us to the big finish, the real takeaway here. Because choosing a CI/CD tool, it's not just a technical decision anymore. It's a strategic one. It's about deciding where your team is going to spend its most valuable resource, its time and its effort. At the end of the day, the Jenkins trade-off is this. You are trading high maintenance for ultimate flexibility. Choosing Jenkins means you're betting on your team's ability to build and expertly manage a pretty complex custom tool chain. The reward? You get unparalleled control. The cost? That ongoing and often heavy burden of maintenance.
So the real question I want to leave you with is for you and your organization. Is the power of infinite customization worth the cost of maintaining it all? Your answer to that question will determine if the old king, Jenkins, still reigns supreme in your castle.